0600 hours, Philippine Sea, aboard the lead aircraft carrier. The sun bleeds orange across the horizon, burning off the morning mist. Flight deck crews move with practiced lethargy, pushing yellow tractors across the rough, non-skid surface of the runway. The smell of jet fuel and salt spray hangs heavy in the humid air. Inside the massive vessel, the rhythm is slow and steady. In the galley, sailors line up for powdered eggs and strong coffee, their laughter mixing with the low hum of the ship's ventilation. A pair of fighter jets sits cat-hooked on the bow, pilots running pre-flight checklists. The ocean stretches out endlessly, flat and glass-like. It looks like another boring Tuesday in the Pacific. Inside the Combat Information Center, the blue glow of radar screens illuminates tired faces. A radar operator blinks, leaning closer to his console. A ghost signal flickers at the edge of the detection ring. Then another. Then 10 more. The operator taps his headset, his posture stiffening. The screen fills with red vectors moving at impossible speeds. He stands up, his chair scraping loudly against the deck. He screams for the tactical action officer. The alarm klaxon shreds the morning calm. Vampire! Vampire! Inbound! The PA system screams. On the flight deck, heads snap up. The horizon flashes. White contrails streak across the sky like jagged scars, closing the distance in seconds. The escort destroyers flanking the carrier react instantly. Their vertical launch cells blow open. Defensive interceptor missiles shoot skyward on pillars of fire, hunting the incoming threats. The phalanx close-in weapon systems spin up, their barrels rotating with a mechanical whine. They spit tongues of flame, sending walls of tungsten tracers into the sky to create a curtain of steel. It is not enough. The sheer volume of the swarm overwhelms the computer targeting systems. The first hypersonic missile evades the tracers. It slams into the carrier's island superstructure. Steel shears like wet paper. The explosion rips the radar tower free, hurling it onto the flight deck with a deafening crash. Glass shatters in the bridge, spraying the captain and officers with razor-sharp shards. A second missile strikes the waterline on the starboard side. The hull buckles. A massive shockwave punches through the mess decks, throwing sailors into steel bulkheads. Tables bolted to the floor rip loose, pinning crewmen underneath. Hot steam pipes burst in the passageways, scalding skin and filling the corridors with blinding white fog. On the flight deck, chaos reigns. A parked fighter jet catches fire from the falling debris. Its fuel tank cooks off. A massive fireball engulfs 3 deck crewmen. They tumble backward, uniforms ablaze, rolling on the non-skid surface. The ship groans, a deep metallic scream of twisting iron that vibrates through the soles of every sailor's boots. The executive officer pulls himself up from the deck of the bridge. Blood runs down his face from a cut above his eye. He grabs the glitched intercom, shouting over the roar of secondary explosions. "Damage control, report! All engines ahead flank, hard to port." He coughs in the acrid black smoke filling the command center. He tries to stabilize the massive vessel to clear the flight deck for emergency launches. The ship lists 5 degrees to the right. Below decks, water rushes into the engine compartments. It sprays through the ruptured hull with the force of a fire hose, knocking mechanics off the catwalks. Emergency lights flicker red, casting long dancing shadows over the rising water. The carrier, once an invincible fortress, is now a burning cage. 0602 hours, flight deck stricken aircraft carrier. Black smoke billows from the starboard side, obscuring the morning sun. The air screams with the sound of venting steam and dying hydraulics. Crewmen in colored jerseys scramble over twisted metal, dragging fire hoses across the listing deck. The ocean below churns with white foam where debris splashes down continuously. The massive ship shudders violently as internal bulkheads groan under the strain of the listing hull. A sailor in a red jersey points to the sky. He screams, but the roar of the fires drowns him out. 3 more missiles dive from the clouds at a near vertical angle. They move too fast for the human eye to track, appearing only as blurs of gray motion. The first missile strikes the number 3 catapult. The impact vaporizes the steel track instantly. The blast wave catches a loaded fighter jet waiting for launch. The aircraft flips over, its wings snapping off and cartwheeling into a group of fuel handlers. The fuselage explodes. Burning jet fuel sprays across the deck like liquid napalm. It coats the frantic crewmen, who drop their hoses and run, engulfed in orange flames. They dive over the side of the ship, plummeting 60 feet into the roiling sea. The second missile punches through the flight deck armor. It buries itself deep into the hangar bay below before detonating. The explosion is contained within the steel belly of the ship. The pressure looks for an escape. The center of the flight deck bulges upward for a split second, then ruptures. A geyser of fire, molten steel, and aircraft parts erupts from the hole. The blast hurls a parked helicopter off the edge of the ship. It spins uncontrollably, rotor blades smashing into the control tower before crashing into the water. Inside the hangar bay, the destruction is total. The blast wave rips through the tightly packed rows of aircraft. Wings shear off. Canopies shatter. Maintenance crews working on engines are thrown against the bulkheads like rag dolls. The fire suppression system triggers, spraying foam from the ceiling, but the heat is too intense. It instantly turns the water to steam, scalding the survivors. On the bridge, the captain grips the railing as the floor tilts sharply beneath his feet. "Flood the magazines," he bellows. "Do not let the bombs cook off." The weapons officer smashes his fist onto the emergency panel. "Systems are non-responsive, sir. Main lines are severed." A third missile slams into the aft section, directly hitting the jet fuel storage tanks. The explosion is catastrophic. A fireball the size of a city block rises into the sky. The concussion wave shatters every window on the ship's island. Inside the bridge, officers are thrown to the deck amidst a shower of glass and ceiling tiles. The shockwave travels through the length of the ship. In the mess hall, lights explode. Pipes burst, spraying hot oil and hydraulic fluid onto the fleeing sailors. The ship lifts further, now dipping 10 degrees. Unsecured equipment, tool chests, missile carts, tractors, slides across the hangar deck, crushing anyone in their path. On the flight deck, a munition skid loaded with heavy bombs rolls into the heart of the fire. The intense heat cooks the warheads. Boom! The secondary explosion tears a massive gash in the side of the carrier. Thick, oily smoke pours from the wound, choking the sky. The once proud vessel is now a drifting slaughterhouse, burning from the inside out. 0615 hours, Philippine Sea, perimeter of the burning carrier group. The ocean surface is an oil-slicked graveyard. Black smoke sits on the water like a heavy fog, stinging the eyes of survivors bobbing in the swells. The escort ships, destroyers and frigates, break formation, their engines churning white foam as they attempt desperate evasive maneuvers. Their radar dishes spin frantically, searching the smoke-filled sky. The defensive screen is shattered. The remaining ships are no longer protectors, they are targets. The air fills with the high-pitched shriek of incoming ordnance. It is not a single missile, it is a rain of steel. A guided missile destroyer turns hard to port, its hull leaning dangerously into the turn. The close-in weapon system on the bow fires a continuous stream of tungsten, the barrel glowing red-hot. It saws the first incoming missile in half. The debris splashes harmlessly into the waves, but the system cannot track the second threat. The missile slams amidships, directly below the smokestack. The explosion guts the vessel. It blows the engine room apart. The shockwave travels upward, blasting the exhaust funnels into the air. They crash down onto the bridge, crushing the command deck. The ship loses power instantly. It drifts, dead in the water, bleeding black oil from a jagged hole in its side. On a nearby frigate, the captain grips the external railing. He watches the destroyer burn. "Hard starboard!" he screams. "Deploy chaff, get us into the smoke!" The frigate dumps clouds of silver foil strips into the air to confuse enemy radar. It works for a moment. A missile passes overhead, missing the mast by inches. The wake of the missile knocks a lookout from the crow's nest. He falls 80 feet to the steel deck below. Then, a heavy anti-ship missile acquires the frigate's heat signature. It strikes the waterline at the bow. The impact snaps the ship's keel. The sound is like a gunshot amplified 1,000 times. The vessel folds in half. The bow points toward the sky. The stern lifts out of the water, exposing the spinning propellers. Sailors on the sloping deck lose their footing. They slide uncontrollably down the steel plating. They crash into winches and railings before falling into the churning gap between the two halves of the dying ship. The ocean rushes into the breach. The water around the sinking ships is a nightmare. Burning fuel spreads across the surface, creating a floating inferno. Sailors swimming away from the wreckage scream as the fire catches up to them. They dive under the oily surface, holding their breath until their lungs burn, only to resurface into the heat. A rigid-hull inflatable boat drops from the side of a damaged supply ship. It hits the water with a splash. 6 sailors scramble aboard. The coxswain yanks the engine cord. The motor sputters and dies. He pulls again. Nothing. A large piece of debris, a radar array from the destroyed destroyer, falls from the sky. It crushes the small boat and the men inside, driving them under the black water. The sea is cluttered with flotsam. Helmets, life jackets, splintered crates, and bodies float in the swell. The attack is over, but the dying continues. The once mighty fleet is reduced to burning scrap iron, sinking slowly into the deep Pacific. 0630 hours, 600 feet below the Philippine Sea. The nuclear-powered attack submarine hangs suspended in the crushing blackness. Inside the cylindrical pressure hull, the air is cool and smells of recycled oxygen and ozone. Crewmen in blue coveralls move silently through the narrow corridors, their rubber-soled shoes making no sound on the steel deck. In the darkened sonar room, the only light comes from the green waterfall displays cascading down the monitors. The silence is heavy, broken only by the faint, rhythmic hum of the reactor coolant pumps. A sonar operator presses his headphones tight against his ears. He frowns. He adjusts the gain knob with a trembling hand. A jagged spike tears across the visual display. It is not biological, it is not tectonic. It is the sound of heavy metal twisting and breaking. The low-frequency rumble of distant explosions vibrates through the submarine's steel skin. It sounds like massive iron doors slamming shut miles away. The hull groans softly as the shockwaves pass through the water column. The operator spins in his chair, ripping the headset off one ear. Con sonar, massive transient detected, bearing 040, multiple heavy explosions. In the control room, the officer of the deck drops his pen. He grabs the overhead rail as the vibration intensifies. "Captain to the con!" he shouts. The captain bursts from his stateroom, shoes slamming on the deck plates. He slides into the control center, his eyes locking onto the tactical plot. "Report." "Sir, acoustic signature confirms multiple hull implosions." The sonar chief calls out, his voice sharp. "Sounds like main boilers rupturing, large vessels breaking up. It's the carrier group." The captain stares at the digital chart. He does not blink. He turns to the helm. "Battle stations," the captain barks. His voice cuts the tension like a knife. "Spin up the navigation gyros. Make your depth 60 feet. Raise the floating wire antenna. We need orders. Make my depth 60 feet 15 degrees up bubble." The diving officer repeats. He pulls back on the yoke. The massive submarine tilts upward. The deck angles sharply. Loose clipboards slide across the navigation table. The propulsor bites into the dense water, driving 7,000 tons of lethal steel toward the surface. The crew braces against consoles, shifting their weight. They rise from the safety of the deep into the kill zone. 0635 hours, radio room U.S. attack submarine. The space is the size of a walk-in closet, bathed in the harsh glow of red battle lanterns. The air is cold, kept frigid to protect the banks of servers and encryption drives. A lone radio man sits hunched over the console, sweat beading on his neck despite the chill. He stares at the frequency display. Above the hull, the floating wire antenna trails in the turbulent water, sniffing the air for a signal. The speaker crackles. Static hisses, then clears. The digital handshake screeches, a burst of electronic noise that signifies a connection. The high-speed teleprinter wakes up. It clatters violently, vibrating against the metal desk. Paper feeds out in short, jerky bursts. The radio man grabs the sheet before it finishes printing. He scans the header. The text is bold. Flash override. He tears the paper from the feed. He punches the verified button on his console. He turns and sprints into the control room. "Captain, flash traffic!" The radio man thrusts the paper into the commander's hand. The captain snaps the paper open. He reads the alphanumeric string. He looks at the executive officer. "Officer of the deck, confirm coordinates." The XO pulls a laminated card from his breast pocket. He reads the daily authentication code. He compares it to the printout. He looks up. "The code matches, sir. It is a valid launch order." The captain moves to the heavy steel safe bolted to the bulkhead. He inserts a brass key. The XO inserts a second key. They turn them simultaneously. The lock tumbles with a heavy clunk. The door swings open. The captain pulls out the red binder. He flips to the page marked with today's date. His finger traces the firing solution. Target package Alpha 1, the Chinese Surface Action Group. He grabs the heavy black handset of the ship-wide intercom. He squeezes the talk button. The click echoes through the silent control room. "Man battle stations," the captain says. His voice is flat, devoid of tremor. "Spin up all missiles. Set condition 1SQ for strategic launch. This is not a drill." In the weapons control center, the fire control technician slams a magazine into his console. He types furiously. The screen shifts from safe to armed. The submarine is no longer a listening post. It is a loaded gun. 0640 hours, attack center USS submarine. The electronic warble of the general alarm pulses through the ship. Bong bong bong. The sound is deafening in the confined spaces. "Man battle stations! Missile! Missile!" The announcement echoes off the steel bulkheads, drowning out the hum of the ventilation. Sailors bolt from their racks in the berthing compartments. They slide down vertical ladders, sliding so fast their boots barely touch the rungs. Hands grip smooth steel rails. Feet hit the deck plates with heavy thuds. Watertight doors slam shut throughout the vessel. Crewmen grab the heavy locking wheels and spin them hard. The steel dogs engage with a grinding screech, sealing the compartments into isolated watertight boxes. In the attack center, the weapons officer leans over the fire control console. His face is illuminated by the amber glow of the digital map. He types rapidly. The keys clack like machine gun fire. "Loading target package," he shouts. "Vertical tubes 1 through 12 assigned." The digital overlay on the screen shifts. Red target vectors lock onto the coordinates of the Chinese fleet floating miles above. The computer calculates the flight path, wind speed, and fuel burn. Forward of the control room, in the missile compartment, the mood is electric. Technicians move between the massive vertical cylinders that house the Tomahawk cruise missiles. They check pressure gauges. They flip safety switches. Inside the tubes, the weapons wake up. Gyroscopes spin to life with a high-pitched whine that vibrates through the hull. Internal batteries activate, powering the guidance computers. The hydraulic latches holding the missiles in place disengage with a sharp clank. "Weapon power on," the fire control technician reports. All missiles spinning up, aligning inertial navigation. The captain stands behind the periscope stand, gripping the railing. He watches the readiness lights on the main panel flip from red to green, one by one. "Flood tubes," the captain orders. "Open outer doors." The submarine is no longer a vehicle. It is a coiled spring, tight and dangerous, seconds away from snapping. 0645 hours, control room USS attack submarine. The deck tilts at a sharp 20-degree angle. Gravity pulls at the crew. The diving officer grips the yoke like a pilot, his knuckles white. He fights the massive weight of the vessel. The digital depth gauge scrolls downward rapidly. 500 feet. 400. The ship is a 7,000-ton steel beast, forcing its way toward the surface. "Passing 400 feet, the diving officer calls out. Vertical velocity 15 feet per second. Outside the hull, the water pressure changes drastically. The steel skin of the submarine reacts. It expands as the crushing weight of the deep ocean lifts. The metal pops and groans. The sound echoes through the ship like a sledgehammer striking an anvil. It is the sound of the pressure hull breathing. In the sonar room, the operator winces. The noise of the expanding hull washes out the passive sensors for a split second. He presses the headset tighter. "Con sonar, own ship noise high, we are blinding ourselves." The captain ignores him. "Maintain up bubble. Get us to launch depth." The submarine punches through the thermal layers of the ocean. Cold water mixes with warm. The weight creates a disturbance that enemy sonar could spot. The propeller turns slowly, biting into the water with minimal cavitation to avoid creating noise bubbles. "Leveling off," the diving officer says. He pushes the yoke forward. The deck flattens. The ship shudders as the momentum shifts. They hover at 150 feet, shallow, vulnerable, and deadly. The water above them is no longer a shield. It is a thin curtain. The submarine sits just beneath the waves, a hidden predator ready to strike. 0648 hours, forward missile deck USS attack submarine. The compartment is a maze of hydraulic lines and thick black cables. The air is stale and cold. The launch control officer stands before the VLS status panel. 12 red lights glare at him. He flips the master arming switch. The plastic safety cover snaps back with a sharp click. "Open outer doors, he commands. On the curved spine of the submarine's hull, outside in the crushing ocean, heavy steel hatches grind open. The hydraulic rams scream against the water pressure. The sound vibrates through the ceiling of the control room, a deep mechanical groan. Seawater surges into the open missile tubes. It smashes against the fiberglass canisters encasing the weapons. The sudden intake of tons of water pushes the nose of the submarine down. The deck dips. "Compensating," the ballast control officer shouts. He slams the trim valves open. High-pressure air hisses violently into the forward ballast tanks. It forces water out, fighting to keep the heavy steel tube level. The deck shudders as the vessel wrestles with the sudden weight shift. Inside the vertical tubes, the pressure equalizes instantly. The missiles sit submerged, exposed to the open ocean, held only by the firing latches. "Tube pressure equalized," the weapons officer reports. Outer doors fully open, muzzles are clear. On the console, the lights flip. Red turns to green. A solid row of emerald light illuminates the officer's face. The firing circuit closes. The voltage in the launch capacitor spikes. The hum of building electricity rises in pitch until it becomes a painful squeal. "Launch sequence initiated," the captain says. He grips the periscope handles. "Match bearings and shoot." 0650 hours. Weapons control, USS attack submarine. The weapons officer lifts the plastic guard over the firing trigger. He presses the square button labeled Execute. An electrical signal races through the copper cabling at the speed of light, reaching the base of Tube 1. A gas generator charges at the bottom of the silo. It detonates. A massive pulse of high-pressure steam and gas expands instantly inside the tube. It slams into the base of the cruise missile. The weapon is hurled upward, riding a pillar of expanding gas. It tears through the watertight seal at the top of the canister. The missile shoots out of the submarine's hull. It rushes upward through the dark water, encased in a bubble of exhaust. The heavy cylinder breaches the ocean surface. It hangs in the air for a fraction of a second, shedding water like a surfacing whale. The nose cap blows off, crack whoosh. The solid fuel rocket booster ignites. A blinding white flame erupts from the tail. The roar is instantaneous and deafening. It vaporizes the seawater beneath it into a cloud of scalding steam. The missile accelerates from 0 to 400 miles per hour in seconds. Smoke trails corkscrew into the sky. Below, the submarine shudders violently. The recoil of the ejection pushes the hull down. "Tube 1 away!" the officer shouts. "Tube 2 firing!" The sequence repeats. Thump, hiss, roar. Another missile breaches the surface, then another. The ocean boils. 12 pillars of fire scream into the morning sky. The smoke is thick and gray, hanging over the water like a storm cloud. The missiles climb to 500 feet. Their stubby wings snap open with a metallic clack. The tail fins extend. The rocket boosters burn out and jettison, falling back into the sea with heavy splashes. The turbofan jet engines spool up. They whine, then settle into a deep, steady roar. The missiles nose over, leveling out. They drop low, skimming just feet above the waves to stay under radar coverage. They turn in unison, 12 hunters locking onto a magnetic bearing, speeding toward the horizon. 0655 hours, 50 feet above the Philippine Sea, the 12 cruise missiles level out. They drop until they are barely skimming the wavetops. Their turbofan engines scream at high pitch, driving the weapons forward at 550 miles per hour. The salt spray from the ocean surface coats their aluminum skins. They are invisible to long-range radar, hidden by the curvature of the Earth and the clutter of the waves. They move in a silent, coordinated pack, adjusting their flight paths to approach the enemy fleet from multiple angles. On the bridge of the lead Chinese destroyer, the mood is tense but controlled. Officers scan the horizon with binoculars. The air conditioning hums. The earlier attack on the U.S. carrier is confirmed successful. They believe the threat is neutralized. Inside the Combat Information Center, the air defense officer watches the sweeping green line of the search radar. Then the world changes. The radar screen blooms. 12 red dots appear simultaneously at the very edge of the detection ring, less than 20 miles out. They are moving fast. The officer freezes for a split second. He smashes the general quarters button. Inbound. Sea skimmers, multiple contacts, bearing 180, he screams into the headset. The warning siren howls through the ship. The automated defense systems wake up. The massive turret of the main gun swings around. The close-in weapon systems, CIWS, on the port and starboard side spin up instantly, their radar dishes twitching as they search for a lock. The cruise missiles detect the radar energy painting them. Their onboard computers react. They do not fly straight, they begin to weave. They bank left, then right, performing erratic S-turns to throw off the targeting solutions. On the destroyer's deck, lookouts scream and point. The gray shapes of the missiles are visible now, tearing just above the water like sharks breaking the surface. They close the distance in seconds. The roar of their engines reaches the ship, a terrifying, rising shriek that drowns out the alarm sirens. The destroyer fires. The forward cannon thumps, spitting shells at the low-flying targets. The water erupts in geysers of white foam as the rounds miss, splashing harmlessly into the sea. The missiles are too fast. They are too low. They are inside the kill zone. 0658 hours, starboard deck, Chinese destroyer. The air vibrates with the deafening roar of the rotary cannons. The close-in weapon systems spin at 10,000 rounds per minute. They spit a solid tongue of flame 3 feet long. A wall of tungsten tracers slashes the air, churning the ocean surface into a white froth. Spent shell casings rain down onto the steel deck like hail, clattering loudly around the boots of the terrified crew. The first U.S. missile flies directly into the stream of lead. The tracers shred the aluminum fuselage. The warhead detonates prematurely. A massive orange fireball blooms 50 yards from the ship. Shrapnel whistles through the air, clanging against the hull and shattering the bridge windows. But the second missile dives under the explosion. It ignores the defensive fire. It strikes the destroyer amidships, just below the radar mast. Crunch. The impact is absolute. The warhead punches through the outer steel plating like a needle through cloth. It buries itself deep inside the officer's wardroom before the fuse triggers. The explosion blows the side of the ship out. A 30-foot section of the hull peels back like a sardine can. A shockwave of heat and overpressure blasts upward through the decks. The radar mast snaps at the base. It topples slowly, crashing onto the helicopter deck and crushing a waiting flight crew. A third missile slams into the waterline near the stern. It detonates inside the engine room. The blast vaporizes the main turbines. High-pressure steam lines rupture instantly. Superheated steam fills the engineering compartment, scalding everyone inside within seconds. The shock breaks the ship's keel. The stern drops 5 feet into the water with a sickening lurch. On the bridge, the captain is thrown across the room. He slams into the helm console. The lights die. Emergency red battle lanterns flicker on, revealing a scene of devastation. Smoke pours through the ventilation shafts. Outside, the remaining missiles find other targets. A frigate sailing nearby takes a direct hit to its ammunition magazine. The ship disappears in a blinding flash of white light. A mushroom cloud of smoke rises hundreds of feet into the air. When the smoke clears, the frigate is gone. Only burning oil and debris remain on the surface. The Chinese destroyer lists heavily to starboard. Secondary explosions ripple through the hull as fuel lines ignite. The massive vessel, moments ago a predator, is now a burning wreck, crippled and sinking. 700 hours, surface of the Philippine Sea. The flagship destroyer is finished. The fires burning in the engineering sections weaken the structural steel. The hull emits a loud, vibrating moan that carries across the water. It sounds like a dying animal. The ship lists past 40 degrees. Gravity takes over. Loose cargo, ammunition crates, and bodies slide down the deck and splash into the oily water. A massive secondary explosion rips through the bow. The blast breaks the ship's back. The stern lifts high into the air, dripping water and mud. The giant brass propellers hang exposed, still spinning slowly from residual momentum. They chop the air helplessly. With a final, rushing suction sound, the vessel slides backward. The ocean swallows the burning steel. A massive geyser of white foam and bubbles erupts as the ship plummets to the crushing depths. Then, the surface begins to calm, leaving only a thick scar of black oil and debris. 600 feet below, inside the U.S. attack submarine, the silence returns. The sonar room is quiet. The operator watches the waterfall display. The jagged red lines of the explosion fade, replaced by the soft static fuzz of the ocean background. Target destroyed, the operator whispers. Breaking up noises confirmed. Multiple contacts sinking. In the control room, the red battle lanterns still bathe the crew in crimson light. The captain does not celebrate. He checks the tactical clock. Retaliation will come. Enemy aircraft will be hunting them within minutes. Cut the floating wire, the captain orders. Make depth 800 feet, rig for ultra-quiet. The external cable cutter snaps the communications antenna. The wire drifts away into the dark current. The diving officer pushes the yoke forward. The submarine angles steeply downward, seeking the safety of the thermal layers deep below. The engine room throttles back. The propeller slows to a barely perceptible crawl. The reactor pumps switch to low-flow natural circulation. The ship becomes a hole in the water, making no sound, emitting no energy. On the surface, patrol aircraft bank over the burning wreckage, dropping sonar buoys into the water. But the sensors hear nothing but the settling of debris. The hunter has vanished. The ocean is empty once again.